Hi guys, it's Leon. It's Tuesday, the 20th of April, um, 2021. I was going to say 19 something or other because I'm old. So I'm quite tense at the moment. And the best thing I could actually think of to get myself to do something remotely interesting, productive, at least for myself, today is to come out and talk to you guys because I do have a few things that I'd like to show you or share. I'm going to take the pin out of the hair because I always personally think this looks a bit more, friendly, whatever, than less school mistressy, than with the hair to the back. The reason that I am quite tense at the moment is that there's been a ton of news messaging, news media messages going around since yesterday that saying that tonight there's going to be another press conference and potentially we're going to at least sort of halfway come out of lockdown, and I'm you know losing it here. Losing it because it's been so long and all my activities in my life over the past. So this is going to be a bit of a whine. If you can relate, thank you. If this brings you down and you don't want to listen to me, please feel free to, move off somewhere else because I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. But my life has been pretty much, it's been tough. And there have been lots of insights gained over the past year and a bit, a year and a quarter even, in total since this whole pandemic thing started off. And recently there hasn't been that much, I don't know, bad fearfulness among people that I've noticed so much people have gotten used to. Also being in lockdown a lot, not all the way because it's impossible. A lot of our clients are in trouble. Financially, their lives are much more gone than mine, really. I still have, relatively solid circumstances that I can rely on. So that's not it really. And it's just been really lonely for me. And maybe that's all I really have to say about that, that it's just really, it's been like that for lots of people where you just didn't get to see enough people and you become a different person in this type of a life. And for me, there's been a lot of insight gained. There's been a lot of, I've learned things in this life, in this situation. I've learned to deal and cope. I am so grateful that I started my Tummo practice in early 2020 because that has made a huge difference as to my strength, the level of how much I can actually rely on myself to cope, to find ways to think of things and so on and so forth. Find solutions, find, understanding in ways I am, yeah. So maybe I should include in this story a little bit of a Tummo progress report as it is at the moment. I have been practicing. If you don't know what Tummo is, I'm going to recapitulate that for us just a little bit here. It's a Tibetan Kundalini yoga practice that involves bringing the Kundalini energy through your root chakra into your body in a way that's controlled and where the energy is allowed to transform in stages first stage 1, then stage 2, then stage 3. Stage 3 happens in the head. That's actually something that can be felt quite clearly. I've noticed that as I progress with this, I've been doing this, like I said, for a bit more than a year now. And I have moved to the 3rd level. Actually, the 2nd level of the Tummo came for me in November, I think, late November, early December. And I moved on to level 3, I think, in February. So that happened really quickly. Getting used to the transformed Kundalini energy at first took me nearly a year. And there are still moments where I feel like, whoa, this is, there's so much. It's like being a big hot air balloon, and it's just, there's this constant, it's not constant, it's not all the time. It's something that when I'm in this meditative state, I can feel this really strongly, and sometimes it's a bit much still. So after all that time, what you notice also is that as you progress through these different levels, the sort of response from the Kundalini energy becomes more automatic. It just happens really quickly, really easily. I make space for it as well because it's been a huge comfort, like I said also. It's given me a lot of strength. It's allowed me to, feel a lot more free in myself. So I did not need the support of, things around me as much as it would have as would have been the case, say a few years ago or even 10 years ago, because then things were really different. I have started doing this. I started off getting this actual precise Tummo practice where you transform the Kundalini energy into something else, and that gets transformed into level 2, Tummo, and so on and so forth. Not so much for the benefits of body heat, which is how normally Tummo is brought to people, as a sort of a strategy against the cold, against winter circumstances in nature, especially in Tibet, of course, in the mountains. And I didn't want it for that reason. I don't need it for that reason necessarily, although there have been times where I could feel that I have, really good body heat. I can rely normally, most of the time, I can rely on being nice and warm from the inside out. It's very comfortable to be able to feel that way. I have not needed to turn on the heater as much during the winter. So now, as you can hear the birds out there, it's very spring-like. Today is a beautiful day, and when I'm done here talking to you guys, I'm going to go back out and sit outside a bit more because it's a gorgeous day, and the rest of the week will probably be, as they're saying, a bit cooler still, but it's really nice at the moment. But Tummo has given me the actual sense of the warmth, not so much to the extent that I could walk around in my underpants, in the snow. I also haven't tried to do that or looked for that at all. I am interested in the transformative properties of the energy itself inside me, my relationship with the energy. At what point do I surrender to this energy, let it take me over? And at which point is that not something I want to do? And, do I stay in control? In order to be human, whatever that means, really. I have to, keep track of those things. And in many cases, I think that I have become more myself to the extent that I've become a lot less stressed. I have a basic sense of self-reliance, and not only from the energy perspective, but also My perspectives have changed quite a bit over the past year, in the sense that anything that is about life and the protection of that which is alive has become that much more important to me. So yeah, so those kinds of things. Whereas I used to be much more afraid of things and people, and I'm less afraid now, and that's good for me. That's so yeah. So to that extent, the recapitulation as to the Tummo. If you want to know more, there is more Tummo intel in a separate playlist on my channel that you can find, where I describe more in detail the techniques and the focus areas and also all that stuff, because there is actual techniques to this Tummo business. So the other thing that is making me tense, or that has been happening, is that there has been a lot of learning going on, and some of that has involved other people as well. I'm hesitant as to how much detail I want to share here or at this point, because it's not completely, it's not, the process or whatever it is isn't really complete yet. I don't know. I'm being vague here. The thing is that we have unearthed quite a few. Maybe that's also a consequence of the Tummo, really, for me, is that I can see cause and effect patterns suddenly, quite clearly, when I'm motivated to understand. I was really motivated to understand why my husband behaves in a particular way in particular circumstances. And I think I've made a lot of progress understanding where he comes from, in a way, whereas we've been together for a very long time, but only now do I really understand what it's been like. Also because this is how it works for people, I think. Often you only have access, you try to understand people, but you only have access to their story, which sits at a certain level of understanding, which is the level they landed at. That's how, you know, this is how far they got with these experiences at whatever point in their life. Especially, of course, childhood and early adulthood, where things affect people very deeply. Things affect us in a way that determines who we are going to be. Things can happen at 15 that will actually affect who you are for the rest of your life, which is wow, something I never really figured to this extent. And what I'm trying to say here also is that you normally try, as the other person in a relationship very close up to this person, you're trying to understand them, where they come from, but there is this filter coming from our lives, my filter, which, as long as I'm inside the filter, it actually hinders me from seeing things as they are or as they were. And then there's his story, the story he's been telling for his whole life. The level to which the level at which he's at, and that's it. And now it's like the filter that I had sort of shifts over to the side. It's not like I don't have any filters anymore, but it's like, okay, I can actually see the filter itself. So, like growing up in a particular way with not enough friends and too much moving around and not enough relatives and things that I should have had that I didn't have, and so on and so forth. Just like lots of people, That's my filter. And I'm kind of able to open up the way things look for him to the extent that I actually get the chance to talk to him about it. And figuring out like, hey, you know what? You've only ever really lived with other males to any extent. The most of his life, he's been living with other males, other men, boys, men, you know. The let's say the relationship or the proportion between testosterone and estrogen in his life, or between masculine and feminine, if you like, has been way out of whack. So I would normally, back in the day, have said that's patriarchy for you. That's the way society is organized. Those are mind setups that we're taught to think in. We're taught to think in this way, that the priorities that we're trying to use in our lives tend to be the rational priorities, the choices that we make are based on priorities that are easily explainable, easily communicated to others, things that beforehand, before you even start talking about these things, that other people will accept. How often have we done that? That you actually come to some kind of a decision, doesn't matter what it is, and you have to communicate this to people, and you're going to go about it in a way that's more or less possible to handle for us and for them. It doesn't have to be big, it's all over the place. I would always have said it's about society is structured in this way that it's patriarchal. Still today, there are too many factors that have to do with the protection of life, with the protection of innocence, with the protection of the vulnerable in this world, that are simply, ignored and forgotten and repressed and so on and so forth. So, but I don't really exactly look at it like that at this moment, when I'm thinking of my husband and the way he's been influenced and or what am I trying to say here? He's been immersed in masculine energy to like 80-90% of the time. Also at home, also different kinds of masculine energy. Some of them, some of them were actually, on the aggressive side, or on the, the annoying side of kind of things, but not all of them. Many of them were just people going about their business. But for my husband, having a female in his life is still a complete mystery, and he's lived with me for 34 years. Now, I'm the first to admit that I can be really weird in many respects. In many ways, I am not the easiest person to figure out. I am also somebody who, I suppose, I have had a lot of female energy, feminine energy around me a lot of the time, where patriarchal motivations and priorities were sort of covertly asserted, if that's a possibility, all the time. My mother was the biggest rationalist walking the planet. She always had an explanation for everything. Sometimes that was nice to have somebody who was always, comes up with something sensible to say. But she couldn't save her own life. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't help me, really. And I've spent quite a bit of time over the past year, and before that even also, digging up perspectives of my mother not coping so well, and where, you know, you could just see that it was a layer of coping on the outside, and behind it, it was just a complete carnival of emotions and helplessness and unprocessed emotions and all that kind of stuff going on. So I grew up with in fact, with an invalid. And that has color. That's my filter. That's one of the biggest elements in my filter, that I tend to see people as needing me in a one way or another. That they have to, they're doing what they can, and I have to be available for them the whole time and be, you know. And there have been times, especially during this whole lockdown thing here, where it's been quite hard, where I felt like I do not get my juice, you know, my tank doesn't get filled again. And I have an empty tank and I don't know what to do about it anymore. That's been the case for the past couple of months, where every time I manage to get something done, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's hoovering the house or making a vlog or printing some cards or printing some horoscopes or stuff like that. Each time I get something done, it's like, phew, okay, I'm still alive, I'm still here, I'm still operational, you know, I will get through this. But yeah, so not enough people and too many issues and too much talking and too much seriousness and not enough fun and not enough, never a sense of being free to go where you like to go, you know, that kind of thing. That's been bothering me quite a bit. So I'm thinking of other things that I can, you know, I've got a nice book. This is my book that I bought on the internet that I'm reading now, Children Who Remember Previous Lives. It's a bit academic, but so far I'm enjoying the stories and the approaches, and it's quite clear to read. It's easy to read, I think. I've been printing cards. I've been doing a whole lot of Tarot de Marseille research. I've ordered a deck from France, from the south of France, which is actually not a Marseille tarot, although it comes printed from a company that sits quite close to Marseille. The tarot I ordered from them is not a Marseille, but a Besançon tarot, which is more to the north of France. And it's going to be interesting. I'll show it to you when I've got it. Different old deck, European deck adventures. I found a really cool website that has a selection of printable images, even of old decks that I've been using quite a bit. I'll put the link in the description. You can have a look at that if you like. I got a lot of that, of my old you know, playing card imagery and stuff that I've used for different projects in that, on that site. And they're good quality images also, so they're easy to download and print out for yourself. I'm going to show you what I've got here, just to finish off on a, you know, slightly more pretty and cute note, rather than all the whining and moaning about the lockdown, because I'm just sitting on the edge of my seat for this bloody press conference to be over, and for us to know at least that we will be, you know, able to go to a shop without having to phone beforehand and all that kind of stuff. It just feels like you're being policed the whole time, even when that's not even really the case. I just want to go into town and have a coffee. That's all I really want. And go, you know, be able to shop around, just get me a couple of things without, you know, I want to go out and buy a t-shirt. I went to the shop just now and got my underwear. Oh, hallelujah. I've got underwear, you know, and a t-shirt and whatever else I bought. Stickers and stuff. The shop was, before it was, you had to phone in beforehand, and I refused to phone before my underpants. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to wait for them to open to the extent that they have today, where I could just go. My neighbor actually saw me walking down the street and she said, hey, you know, the shop's open again. Because we'd been talking about getting underpants. Yeah. Lockdown blues. Oh, I mean, How nuts can you get? Really serious. So this has been my latest project. It's actually kind of done, I think. I'm still thinking about, putting something on the back of the cards, because there's been a few squiggles of my edging marker going over the, I don't think you'll be able to see any of them, but there's been a couple of squiggles at the back of the cards. Not too bad, really. So this is, I actually used, this is 22 major arcana of the Paris Anonymous Tarot deck. And I have added to that, let me see, because I've got a few cards upside down here, I see now. They are in order. I still have to do a bit of a re-gluing. I think this is it. More or less like so. Yeah. 22. And a couple of extra cards that I'm putting in here, 5 more. So 27 cards in total. For comparison reasons. So Tarot de Marseille, except this is Tarot de Paris, anonyme, and it is an anonymous tarot deck. I'm just going to show you a few cards like this to get an idea of the color palette that this is. I'll put a link in the description for this deck as well. Actually, it's in the same page of the guy that I mentioned just now with his cards. It's in there, so you'll just have the one link. The interesting thing, I'm going to go through these slightly more quickly. There's the Empress looking like a dancer like that. There's quite a few cards that are, this is the Lover's card, where it looks like the male is actually sitting nearly on top of the lap of the female, and there's a little angel at the top. There's a couple of rather interesting discrepancies. This Paris Tarot, for example, this is the Chariot, and maybe you won't be able to make it out, but it has birds, like swans, pulling the chariot instead of, horses or sphinxes or what have you. The Justice card has a two-faced head. There is a male and a female face on the head of the Justice figure. There's a couple more like this. It's a very kind of a feisty, lively kind of a deck. This is an actual spinning wheel. I'm noticing now each time that I'm using any tarot deck, whether the Wheel of Fortune is actually a spinning wheel, because I've been doing research for my other thing that I've been at, is researching asteroids for astrology reasons, for astrology studies. And that's interesting. I haven't got anything ready to show you or talk to you about yet at the moment, but there is a couple of asteroids that are referred to as the Fates, and they are 3 separate asteroids, and there's another one that represents destiny as a whole. And the set of the 3 actually, they're spinning ladies, the spinners of the Fates, right? In Greek mythology. And the link for me to the Wheel of Fortune and its wheel as a spinning wheel, because I'm also spinning myself, I like to spin wool, is kind of particularly entertaining and relevant. And I do not see it as a year cycle anymore, as a wheel of the year, which is what I used to see, how I used to see the with the figures all around it, and the one's going up and the other's going down. And yes, it's a Wheel of Fortune, but this is why it's actually a Wheel of Fortune, because it's a spinning wheel, and because we are, strung onto the wheel by how lucky we are, or by our fates, or by our supervising higher selves, or something along that nature, So let me see what else I can show you. There's a couple more really distinct, different cards. This is the Temperance card, where Temperance is pouring water on what looks like flames behind her. So she's holding the one single cup in both her hands, which is different. There's a couple more differences like that. The card, one of the cards that I find really interesting in these older decks is the Tower card. And I'm interested in the history of the Tower card from also before it became the Tower card, really. There's different systems, and this is one of them. And I have another one here in my set of 5 extras here. That's a completely different setup, even though it may look slightly similar from the distance like this. Both these cards are on the page that I will post in the description. This card in the Paris Tarot is called La Foudre, which means lightning. And this one doesn't have a name, it just has the number. And there's all sorts of background intel. There's another page I will link in the description about this card. That's actually a translation of the, it's a bit wonky, but it's good enough, you know, of the printers, of the publishers who republish this deck nowadays as is. They just got 2 decks, I think, so far on their site, on their shop, and it's the Tarot de Paris and it's the Vieilleville Tarot, which is also quite a different system. I'm somehow fascinated by the different systems. Here's, for example, another. This is a star card where the personality sitting in the image is an astronomer, which is something I know from the Minchiate Tarot, which is an Italian system. So I like having sort of a set of images where you're kind of invited to sort of spread out a bit more and use these other. This is the Moon card, and it has, you know, we know the Moon card with the towers and the dogs and the lobster in the water and all that stuff. This one actually has a man down here playing a little harp and serenading a little naked female standing on a balcony right there. And there's the moon. See, I personally like to have all these alternatives, and they're just like different types of atmosphere. There's the Sun card with the monkey, quite different also. And the Judgment card, it's quite pretty. They're really well drawn and they're not finished. And sometimes they're wonky in weird special ways. So I'm kind of, and I find them, the world card looks like a Minchiate world card where also the world person is standing atop the globe like that. And not in the middle of the world, not representing the world, but dominating the world. There's quite a bit in these cards, in this Paris Tarot, which I would feel would be a dark Marseille interpretation. They're supportive of that kind of a less, you know, less neutral. I tend to feel Tarot de Marseille, like for example my Grimoire here, which was what I had sort of up to now, except for my antique Bertie Tarot, which I made a copy of. This is my normal Marseille go-to little deck, which, you know, this is one reason why I like this. I like using this for its neutrality. When I really need an answer, I will use this. I'm going to use my Tarot de Besançon, which is in the mail, in the same way, I think. Even though, and I ordered it mainly also to have a larger size, because this is like a little mini. But I lost my thread here. because it's so neutral, I'm interested in having more off to the side, different types of different versions. And I talked about Besançon just now. This is how a Besançon tarot can be, spotted. Is instead of a pope and a popess, or a high priest and a priestess, you get these two. Otherwise, they're more or less the same type of deck. There's a couple of differences in name, but this is Jupiter and this is Juno. So there's that. So I've got these. I've got an alternative justice card, which is from yet another town in France, which is close by to where I used to live in France. So a lot of this is really sentimental also. One more alternative devil card, where a person is being carried around. However, the person has what looks like animal legs as well. He's being carried behind the back of the devil, because the devil has got a face on his belly, which is quite common in Marseille tarots. So he's, sticking out on this side and on that side. Still looks like he's got animal legs. Huge. The devil has got huge. What's the word? Rooster feet. That's the word I was looking for. Rooster feet, which is kind of unusual. So yeah. So I made a baggie out of crochet work like that, because I kind of felt that it would be nice to have a cheerful little bag for these kind of scary cards to go and live inside. And I can it's more of a study project that I use this for, that I like to print these out, to have an actual card to look at. I do not need the whole 78 for this. I did the whole 78 for my Bertie tarot, which sits right over there, and which I have already shown you before in the winter times. So that's it, I think, as far as tarot goes at the moment. I managed to distract myself, at least, part of the way. Asteroids I can't really talk about yet, because I haven't come to any conclusions. My husband's got a weird setup with fate asteroids. 2 of the 3 are actually sitting on his nodes, his lunar nodes, which I'm tempted to say is significant. I still have a lot of digging to do, but the relational issues and the past, the actual figuring out of the relational stuff is more important at the moment. And I'm all about finding, there's an asteroid called Potato. Yes, there is. It's in my first house. Yay! Which I think is kind of awesome, because there was another one sitting next to it. Oh yeah, Nehalenia, which is our Dutch, to the extent that there is a Dutch goddess from Roman times. They found quite a batch of statues of stone from the Roman age, I think 200 AD, somewhere around that time, that they dug up out of the west waters over there, out of the North Sea, and they're on display in a museum. And mostly it's like a Demeter or Ceres type goddess, mother goddess statue, not with children, not often, I think maybe 1 or 2 times, but the rest of the times it's just her with a basket of probably fruit or bread on her one side and a dog on the other. That's Nehalenia. So there's an asteroid, Nehalenia, as well, and my Nehalenia sits in my first house next to my Potato asteroid, which I think is just completely adorable, because I'm all about the food and all about the chefing. Being a chef is one of the great comforts in my life. I'm keep looking out the door as if something's going to happen. Nothing happens out there. Out there is just a bird. So yeah. So welcome to my life. I'm really hoping that by tomorrow or Thursday I'm going to be oh, you know, like, okay, so at least we can go have a coffee or do something normal for what we're used to, and we can see where we're at and have a bit of springtime and start evaluating what we learned and what have you learned. Have we used the time? I think I have used the time. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's good, right? But it's been tough, and the winter has been very long and dark and cold also and unpredictable, with sudden lots of snow and cold temperatures and stuff like that. And where you just, I just basically ended up not knowing what to do with myself. So, but I'm not the only one. So much that much I figured out. So, thank you so much for watching. If you lasted all this time, champion, you know. See you next time. Okay. Bye bye for now. Thank you. Ciao.